I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction. Here with your cattle market summary for the week ending Friday, November the 27th. And we just kind of had a nice quiet holiday week there. Nothing really coming in from the outside and affecting the market a whole lot. It actually lent some confidence, and the market has a little bit of momentum coming into this week. And not sure if it's just because a lot of those participants had been goofing around with the futures market, whether it be with high frequency trade or just ganging up on the market in one direction or the other, whether they were taking the week off due to the holiday or what. But just kind of a nice quiet week with not a whole lot of volatility, and saw some decent little gains there. Your live cattle for December closed on Friday up 87 cents. Ending the week at 131.82, which was up $2.12 for the week. Feeder cattle on the January contract was up $1.05, ending the week at 166.02, and that was up $2.37 for the week. So we could take some more of those really without a whole lot of activity coming in and messing things up. For those of us that live in the center 2/3 of the United States there, we just had miserable weather over the holiday weekend there, and the whole last half of the week too, and just cold rain and ice in some spots, and sleet and just wet and cold, and there's nothing worse on cattle than cold and wet. Cold's not so bad on cattle if it's fairly dry, or if it's in a solid form. Even ice, things like that, not too bad. That rumen tends to work like a furnace and keep those cattle warm. It doesn't bother them too bad, but when they get soaked down wet and then cold, it's just hard for them to knock that off. And if they don't have a whole lot of availability of some roughage to get in there to really get their rumen working and warming themselves up, it's tough. And the toughest place by far is some of those new cattle that's turned out on winter wheat pasture down the southern plains. Those cattle haven't been turned out but a couple weeks or so, and most of them don't have anything but a thin hot wire for a windbreak for 200 miles or more. So it's really tough on those cattle there. And as much moisture as we received, it's hard for those caretakers, and there's no cowboy like a wheat pasture cowboy. We can talk about the ranch cowboys, the rodeo cowboys, the wannabe cowboys, but them guys that are out there taking care of these wheat cattle are real cowboys. I tell you what, most of them have no facilities. They've got put together cattle, and they're trying to keep those cattle healthy and alive. And you got to get out there, and guys think it's tough trying to rope a calf out in the arena somewhere or something if the ground's not right. Try roping one in some irrigated rows. Anybody that's tried to do that can really appreciate a plowed up arena, but you've got to get your hands on those cattle somehow. They only make so many portable corrals, and yeah, a lot of guys do use those, but for the most part, none of those wheat pastures have any facilities at all. But you got to get your hands on those cattle somehow to get some medicine in them and try to get them back healthy. But really a tough go for those guys in the southern plains on those winter wheat deals, especially on the real light calves, which are hard to straighten up anyway. It's just the only good thing about the whole deal was coming up through Texas and all the way up into the Dakotas and places is the temperatures weren't that cold really. If all that rain that we saw in the southern plains and in the Midwest was snow, we would be buried in snow. I mean, plumb until April or May, because you figure on an average moisture snow, you get an inch of rain, make 10 inches of snow. There's places that got 6, 8, 10 inches of rain. Just think how much snow that could have been. And so as bad as the rain was, it could have been snow. Really didn't have a fat cattle market last week. These packers are going to need some cattle coming into next week. They're going to have some cattle. Only about 6,500 cattle really sold for the week, unless we saw some over the holiday, which we don't really think that there would have been any. We'll find out whenever the reports come out on Monday. But just a few cattle that sold on a live basis from 121 to 123, which was steady to kind of weak, but not a whole lot different, and 195 on a dress basis. Your slaughter over the holiday week, I expect it was about 462,000, which was a full 30,000 less than the same week a year ago. And we would like to see a little more than that, but we're getting into a good time of year. We've got this turkey holiday behind us, and we've got probably a month here where people are going to be out and about. They're going to be eating in restaurants. They're going to be having holiday parties with their friends, and they're pretty much sick of turkey and ham and things like that. And if you've got a good friend or a family member you haven't seen in a long time, you're not going to take them out for a turkey breast. You're going to take them out for a good juicy steak, or they're going to think that you don't think a whole lot about them. You look at your CME feeder cattle index, it ended the week there at 170.216. Cattle Market Central real-time index at 170.154, so they're very tight there. We've had a few people ask us about maybe doing some rundowns on a break even, and I'm not a sterling profit maker or none of that kind of thing, but you just kind of look at your basics on a cost of gain. Some of the old timers will say you can take your corn price and loosely double it and move your decimal point, and you can come up with what your cost of gain is going to be. Well, you figure corn's around 350 or 60, then that's going to make, if you figure that easy math there, your cost of gain is going to be in the low 70s. But you know, that's just bare minimum. That's not figuring in a lot of your death loss, medicine costs, transportation expenses, interest, all that kind of stuff. That you figure in a commercial lot, you should be able to, on some really good cattle, get a cost of gain in the 80s somewhere. If you figure some cattle at that CME index price on a 750 pound steer and 80-cent cost of gain, would figure out on some cattle taking them up to 1,450 pounds. Right now, an 80-cent cost of gain breaks even at about 127 and in the 60s, which you could pretty much hedge in for right now on that April board. Cost of gain's around 85 cents. You're going to figure it's going to be just a pinch over $1.30, which is cutting it pretty close. And if you have a bad storm or some things don't go just perfectly right, you have some death loss, things like that, cost of gain around 90 is going to put your break even around 130.250, which is which you cannot hedge in because your board closed on for that is down. It's in the upper 120s there, so that's not going to work. But we heard some reports out of some specials there on late in the week there at Green City Livestock Market in north central Missouri. They had a fancy load of 903 pound steers, bring 189.50. Now those would have gone to some Iowa farmer feeders there. So I thought, just for fun, let's figure a cost of gain at 70 cents on those cattle right there, which makes your break even about 144.50. And I'm not really sure where you're going to get protection like that, but it's going to be hard to come by. Cattle Market Central markets there late in the week on Friday. Burwell, Nebraska had a load of big calves, 605 pound calves, steer calves, bring 195, which is a good market. And like I said, this market's a little stronger here, especially mid to late week on the few places that have sales, and we expect things to carry over this week until the board starts being volatile and messing that up. But from a home office here in Maysville, Missouri, we'll talk to you next week.